does it. That constantly looks like he's berating his players. I mean, he's hard to root for, but his teams in the long run always win, so he's hard to go against, which is you know just part of the game. And I want to start off today because I've been waiting all week to talk to you about it since Selection Sunday. And of course, another coach. I like him. I've always admired his game. I know he's not a
Yeah.
great person. Patino, bitching and moaning about St. John's. Only three teams coming out of the Big East. That's a little hard to take. And I'm sorry. I mean, when you look at Seton Hall all year long, Seton Hall put out a quality product. They beat UConn one time. So, I mean, I don't see how they could sit there and look at the Big East and say only three teams should go. I just don't get that.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the stronger conferences all year, which we talked about. I mean, a little bit top heavy with UConn and also Creighton as well as Marquette, but still some good competition all year long. And I was surprised that they only got three.
And the other thing about it is, when you look at, and I do like Virginia and I like their coach, but there's no way Virginia deserved to be in the tournament this year. They did not have a good year at all. I watched at least 10 of their games, and of the 10 games I tuned into them, I think I turned off about 6 of them because they were so rancid. I couldn't watch them anymore. It was hard to watch. And I mean, I understand they've won a championship in the last 10 years. They're an ACC blue blood. Tony Bennett's one of the most respected coaches around America, but he didn't deserve to get in the NCAA tournament this year.
No, and that's they got knocked off in the play-in.
Yeah.
And so I think your point, we don't even have to talk about it much, was proven. Colorado State knocked them off, and they held them to 12 points in the first half.
Yeah.
That was just putrid, and it's not really an exciting brand of basketball to watch ever, but usually he's got more talent on his team, and so it makes up for the brand of basketball because they're able to showcase some of that talent. And this year they just don't have that guy. It's been pretty evident all year long, and the ACC is down. I mean, there's just no doubt about it. This isn't the ACC we used to watch. Syracuse isn't what it once was. Maryland's gone, and in the Big Ten, and they're no good anymore. Boston College is weak. I mean, it's just there's no teams in the ACC conference that are as good as they used to be. Wake Forest is no longer a force. NC State had a little bit of a spark there, winning the ACC tournament and knocking off, North Carolina as well as Duke. So give them credit, but besides them, none of those other teams really did a whole lot all year long.
But is this a good thing that's happening to the NCAA basketball? We complain, the people who aren't really down in the heartland of NCAA football, where the SEC rules the world, always complains that if you're not a Big Ten team, if you're not one of the 2 or 3 teams in the Big Ten, or you're not an SEC team, you really don't have a chance in the national championship. It's a foregone conclusion that those conferences or Notre Dame are going to supply us with the Final Four or the Final 8, whatever it be this year. They're coming out of there. They're not. There's no other place that it's going to come out of. You'll have your Clemson run. That team might get in, but for the rest of the time, the thing you always hang your hat on about the NCAA basketball is the fact that of the 64 teams that get in, there you have those bracket busters. You have those teams that make it exciting. But in the end, there was always the blue bloods waiting at the end. You'd have Duke, you'd have a North Carolina, you'd have a Kansas, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But now those big name teams seem to have a real chance of not making it to the Final Four.
Yeah, no, we see the same thing going on year after year after year. We had St. Peter's in 2022. We had Oral Roberts, I believe, in 2019.
Loyola Chicago.
Yeah, Loyola Chicago didn't get to the Final Four, but they made a pretty deep run. And then last year, obviously we had Florida Atlantic who made it all the way to the Final Four. So with the way that college sports are today, you have the ability to pick up players in the transfer portal. They don't have to sit out a year. You can get guys that are talented from lower level colleges. You can get guys that aren't getting playing time at big level colleges, and you can make a team. I mean, basketball, all you need is 2 or 3 guys that are pretty solid, and then some decent role guys, and you can rock it. So I expect this to continue.
Yeah, and you also have to have a very good or a good coach, a coach who knows how to get these guys ready. As we've seen,
Oh,
it's
definitely.
not just rolling it out. I think of especially in college, it is the coach's game. It's coaches and guard play. If you have coaches and you have good guard play, you have a chance to go a very far way in tournament time. What about the fact did the transfer portal really open on Monday for basketball?
Not sure.
Because I had heard it open on Monday, and I was like, "Are you kidding me?" Right after Selection Sunday, and now the NIT is now become, or it might as well. It's like the bowls are in college football. It's like, nah, I'm not going to play in there. No, the players are backing out, the coaches are backing out, and what used to be a great tournament, but I mean, it was losing its luster anyways. Once the expansion of the NCAA tournaments had gone, and it lost its 1 week hold on Madison Square Garden, it kind of lost its luster anyways. Is it time to put the NIT to bed?
Yeah, I think so. I still think it's a good idea for some of these teams that are maybe a year away from making a run to go to the NIT and get some extra practice, get some extra experience in tournament play. But it is losing its luster for sure. I mean, there's just not many eyeballs on it, and that's why some of these universities, some of these kids don't want to play in it because it doesn't draw the ratings. It's not as a big, everybody watches the NCAA tournament, even casual basketball fans.
Right.
But I mean, you either got to have a kid playing in the NIT or be a really diehard fan of one of the teams in there to even watch it. I mean, it's hard. It's hard to do. But there's ways to make it interesting if it's something that they can get a resurgence behind. But I just don't see it happening. And like you said, I believe you're right. Actually, the transfer portal, I'm not sure in basketball, but I believe it opens on Selection Sunday, just like in football. They announce in college football, they announce who's in the college football playoff, and then the portal opens. That's why you saw several teams like Florida State, like Ohio State, teams that didn't make maybe had the resumes but didn't make the college football playoff semifinal, Final Four. Their guys bolted and didn't play in their respective bowl games, and it's just stupid. Why would you even set that date at that time? And my whole thing is, if you're on a team, why don't you play with your team for the end of the year? Do you think I would want a guy who played all year on a team and then jetted before the season was even over? That just doesn't really show good character.
It's almost like, don't report back to your dorm, get your moving van, you're out of here.
Yeah, I don't get it. I mean, I understand these kids, looking out for themselves, trying to benefit off of, what they're doing in college athletics. I mean, they should have been making money a long time ago. My feelings on that. But there's also loyalty. There's also commitment. These values that no longer exist, which kind of make me sick. You signed up, you got paid in a lot of instances to play on this team, and then before the season's even out, you're done and you're moving out of town. It makes no sense, and it's not really the kid's fault. The window should be pushed back in both sports.
Right, I agree. All right, let's look at the brackets. Let's start with East. You got UConn as number 1 against Stetson. We always worry about a letdown, but I don't see UConn. I don't have a problem there. FAU against Northwestern, their next potential team matchup. What about Florida Atlantic against Northwestern? Is Northwestern overrated coming out of the Big Ten? Do they belong there?
You know what? The Big Ten so far has proven me wrong. I mean, they've looked better thus far in the tournament than I expected them to look. And I think it may have just been a little bit more of them beating up on each other, kind of a feast or famine kind of deal this year. And I think they might be a little bit better than even I, gave them credit for. And Northwestern's a team that's made the tournament a lot recently since the hiring of Chris Collins. Nobody gives him any credit. No one talks about Chris Collins, but he's built a pretty damn good little program at Northwestern. And I think this is a good game to watch. It'll be on tomorrow at 12:15. I think this will be an interesting game to see if FAU can recapture any of their magic from last year, and also to see if Northwestern can maybe improve on what they've done thus far. They haven't made a whole lot of noise in the tournament, but they have won a lot more games than before Chris Collins got there.
And then we got San Diego State UAB matchup. San Diego State's everybody's little darling. They've done a lot, over the last 4 or 5 years. I mean, they've been around, hanging around. UAB, any danger in that team?
Yeah, this is a 12-5 matchup.
Yep.
Is that's infamous for this tournament. I mean, there's a 12 that beats a 5 every single year. Sometimes sometimes more than just one. And I think this may be one that we see here. UAB is, I think, a little bit underrated. They've gotten some quad one wins this year, and has been a team that's kind of flown under the radar. They finished 23-11, but they won 5 in a row to end the season. They were 12-5 at home, and then the big one is they were 4-1 on a neutral court. So that's big to me. They lost a game early in the season in Asheville. Their one loss on a neutral court was in Asheville, North Carolina, where they lost to Clemson by 1 point, 77-76. Clemson is a tournament team and a pretty good squad. So that to me was a big one. And then another one of their losses was to McNeese State, who we all know is having a really good season with Will Wade at the helm. And then they've had some other pretty good victories in the sense they beat down Memphis in Birmingham, which was another one of those neutral site games. They beat them 97-88, which was pretty impressive. And then they've already played Florida Atlantic this year and beat them in overtime. So I like this UAB team, and I kind of am picking them to win this game because I like what they've got going on.
All right, the bottom half of the draw. We got Auburn still in there. We got Iowa State, Illinois. Okay, let's put it in order. Iowa State, Illinois, Auburn, San Diego State or UAB. We'll put it as a toss-up. Northwestern, Florida Atlantic are going to face UConn early. Who do you think is the biggest threat to UConn there?
I think it's got to be Auburn. The way that they lost a pretty close game to Tennessee here in Knoxville, and then they went on to win the SEC tournament, and they've been playing pretty hot. So I like what I've seen out of Auburn here. They've got a coach who obviously knows how to win basketball games and knows how to win in this tournament. So obviously in that top half of the bracket, I think Auburn's going to give them some trouble. And then, I got to be honest with you, in that bottom half of that bracket, nobody really scares me. I mean, right. Illinois it has a good record and is a good basketball team, but I watched Tennessee blow them out here at home in Knoxville. They beat them by over 20 points. I'm not really in love with them. And then Iowa State, I think, is one of the most overrated teams in this thing. I know they finished the season out strong. I know they won the tournament. I get all that, but we'll see how they do in the NCAA tournament. I'll believe it when I see it, if you know what I mean.
I got you. Let's go to the South. We got Houston as a number 1. You got your Dukies as a number 4. Wisconsin, another Big Ten blue blood, is sitting there at number 5. Texas Tech is at number 6. Kentucky, of course, number 3. Marquette, number 2. I don't know how interesting Florida is, but it's an SEC team. Of the team just sit there, who is the biggest stretch, do you think, to Houston?
I think, obviously the state of Texas has 7 teams in the tournament, the most by any state. Texas A&M's got a good coach and Buzz Williams. He's been, at Marquette. He's been at Virginia Tech. He's won basketball games everywhere he's ever been. I think, I believe that they're going to beat Nebraska and then, take on Houston in that second round. That won't be an easy game. I've watched Texas A&M all year. They're a pretty tough team. I think Houston should be able to beat them, but that's going to be a tough test right away. And then whoever wins, obviously Wisconsin and Duke both have to take care of business in the first round, but I think that'll be a pretty good matchup if both those teams can get to the round 2. Last year it was the 4 versus 5, Duke versus Tennessee, which I hated, obviously. But this year, if Duke and Wisconsin can get there, I think that 4-5 matchup will be really, really good. And either one of those teams can give Houston a tough time. And then the bottom half of the bracket, NC State is playing just as good as anybody right now. I couldn't believe the run they went on in the tournament. I like that team. I like DJ Burns. Kid, came to Tennessee first. Then he went to Winthrop and helped Winthrop win a lot of basketball games. Then he transferred to NC State. So this kid's played a lot of basketball, Joe. He's on his 5th or 6th year of playing college basketball. And, he's one of the most unique guys in this whole tournament. He's about 6'10", 6'11". He's about 368 pounds. And I'm being generous with that. But man, he moves really well for a big boy. So I think we can't really ignore NC State. And then Kentucky's a team that, I don't really know, how to predict what they're going to do. If they're shooting well, they can beat anybody. But Kentucky's problem is they're not very good defensively. Right. So if they have an off night shooting, I mean, in most games they score 90 to 100 points. And if they do that, they can roll with anybody. But if they have an off shooting night where they're not hitting threes, and they're missing, open field goals, you can't rely on their defense because their defense sucks. So I don't really know what to think about them. And, Marquette is a team that's played good all year. They've obviously got Hulk coming back from injury, but, it's not like you just come back from injury and you're the same guy you were, 5 weeks ago. He hasn't played in 6 or 7 games, I believe.
And quads worry me. Quads worry me because they tend to reoccur.
Exactly. And even if he's healthy, what's that going to look like getting him back into the lineup? So I'm liking the top half of this bracket a little bit better than the bottom, I guess is what I'm saying.
All right, let's go down to the Midwest. We got Purdue. I never liked their coach, but, everybody's, because of Edley, everybody's kind of penciling them into the Final Four. Interesting teams out here. Let's start at the bottom. You got your Tennessee going against St. Peter's. You got Texas. Creighton. I thought, Creighton's one of those weird teams. I thought they were going to win today over Akron. They made it a lot easier than I thought they would. But Creighton.
That game was tied with about 8 minutes. Yeah, at halftime and with about 12 minutes to go in the second half. Yeah. The game was tied. So they pulled away.
They live and die on their threes to me, and it's that or it's that or the highway. South Carolina does not look good at all right now, and I had them going against Creighton in the next round. So very disappointing there. The team I want to talk about here is Kansas. I mean, they're number 4 here. Is that because of reputation or because this Kansas team is that good? I know they've got to be talented, but they didn't seem to have a Kansas year.
No, they really, really fell apart at the end of the season. And honestly, I don't think this team is up to snuff with what we've seen out of Kansas the last 7, 8, 15, however many years you want to say it. I don't like this team as much. Dickinson transferred from Michigan and was looking to, get to the tournament and make some noise because he knew how bad Michigan was going to be this year. But honestly, Kansas, was not the team I think that he expected them to be. And, if they get by Samford, they're going to have to either play a really good McNeese State team or, a Gonzaga team, which I believe either one of those teams could beat Kansas if they're hitting shots. So I don't think, there's no there's no way that we can sit here and guarantee that they're going to get to the Sweet 16 with the roster they've got.
All right. What about your Tennessee team coming out of here? Do you see Tennessee with a path to get to Purdue or whoever? It'll probably be Purdue, but you see Tennessee a path through there?
Yeah, I mean, I do really. They ended the season kind of not the way they wanted to. Losing to Kentucky at home in the last game of the year, and then losing their, I guess it was a third round game, but really the first game they played in the SEC tournament. They should be fresh, Joe. I mean, they should be
Yeah.
fresh. That was one thing that everybody worried. Like if they go on a deep run in the SEC tournament, will they wear themselves out? For the NCAA tournament. And the good news is they're fresh. They lost the first game they played in the SEC tournament, and everybody's healthy on this team. So I expect them, if not now, when? I mean, this
Yeah.
is the best team that Rick Barnes has ever had at Tennessee. I think from top to bottom, I really think they're the deepest team. They're the most consistent team. I know they've had a couple of stinkers, but overall through the season, I think they're the most consistent. They have the best player that he's ever had since he's been at Tennessee. So there's really no excuses. And I got to be honest, I kind of like where they're at here. I mean, if they can beat St. Pete's and take care of business there, then they've got Texas or Colorado State. Neither one of those teams scare me. And then they'll play the winner of Creighton and Oregon. So neither one of those teams scares me either. I mean, this should be a good chance for the Vols to potentially get at least to the Elite Eight and hopefully for the first time in the program's history get to the Final Four.
And out west, I like I always used to say to my friends who are big UConn fans, it's always a good thing to go out west because it seemed like the East and the South, the Midwest, they packed the big teams in there because the West games are on later, I guess, or whatever. They don't seem to have all the talent in the world, but it's another place where a lot of teams coming out of the West and have a really good shot at the national championship. North Carolina took care of business today, took care of business early against Wagner. We talked about Michigan State, and we all know about Coach Izzo. St. Mary's, they've kind of evened themselves up with Gonzaga, but are over the past few years. But how good are they? Alabama, you got Clemson out there. Is this really Clemson team that good, or they just took advantage of a bad ACC? You got Baylor, Dayton, and Nevada right now. It's just started in the second half, and Dayton is down by 9. And then you got Arizona who took care of business against Long Beach State. Who's the team you see coming out of here?
I like, good game is going to be that North Carolina Michigan State game. How many times have those two teams played each other
Right.
in the NCAA tournament? I swear to God, it seems like they play each other every year. But I think whoever wins that game will be a factor moving forward. I expect North Carolina to win. They destroyed Wagner today, and I expect them. They've got a lot of veteran basketball. I mean, Armando Bacot's been there for a decade. He certainly isn't going to be scared to play a tournament game. So I like North Carolina's chances. I hate them, but I like their chances. And then, Bama is a team that if they're playing their brand of basketball, they can beat anybody. If they can get by Charleston, I expect them to make some noise. And then obviously, Arizona is a team that, since Lute Olson has been gone, hasn't really done anything
Right.
in the tournament. I mean, they just really have not done a thing. I've picked them several times, but they've never really made any noise. So I'm kind of a believe it when I see it kind of guy with them. So if I'm picking here, I'm taking Carolina. I'm taking Bama, one of those two teams to win this bracket.
Yeah, I can't go against that. The one thing before we go, I know you got to get to a dinner thing tonight, so we'll make it quick tonight. But this quad one thing, I've been looking at since the selection show. I looked over a lot of the quad one stuff, and I just don't. I can't wrap my head around it. Some of the best teams in college basketball who are in the tournament and are legit had under 500 records in a quad one. So I just don't get how you factor the victory in quad 1 point versus the victory in quad 1 loss against a quad 4 where most of these guys were 12-0. There's got to be a better way to explain to me how they come up with the selections.
Yeah, I mean, I think you need to take strength of schedule into it. I mean, who have you played? Who have you beaten? What is your record? Like I was talking about earlier, it really is important to me. What is your record on a neutral court? Because you're going to be playing games on a neutral court this whole time. So I would look at that. I would also look at who the coach is. I mean, I know that probably shouldn't matter when you're picking a team, but it sure as hell does, as we've talked about all day today.
Yeah.
Who is your coach? Has he coached in the tournament before? Has he won games here? How long has he been there? That stuff all matters to me, and I think should go into it. I mean, I know it's a subjective process, but common sense should also probably prevail, don't you think? I mean, I know it never does anymore in our country, but that's something that we should take into account. And I know we're talking basketball today, but I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about a little bit of this football stuff. I mean, how is Justin Fields traded for a 6th rounder? I mean, Trey Lance, Joe Ryan.
Yeah.
Trey Lance got traded. He's a 3rd stringer who couldn't even get on the field in San Francisco. When he did, he'd break something. So this guy shouldn't even be in the NFL anymore. Probably shouldn't have been in the NFL to begin with. And he gets traded for a 4th rounder, and we're all like, oh, that's a decent trade. And then Justin Fields, who's been the starter in Chicago for the better part of 3 years, almost got him to the playoffs this year without having anyone around him. And he's a 6th rounder. Explain it to me, because I don't get it.
I think I think we've been failed by sports media. When sports talk radio and ESPN and all 24-hour networks came on board, and the Mel Kiper reports and everybody else and all this stuff, we become, instead of studiers and people who really look at things, we take opinions and we end up listening to what they have to say. I mean, Justin Fields, last year, what did Chicago have? 7 wins?
7 and 10. 7 and 10. And he missed 4 games with a dislocated thumb.
7 and 10, and people are making it look like they actually were. The only reason they're picking so high is because Carolina sucks.
Right. They got Carolina's pick from last year because they traded down because they wanted to keep Justin Fields. Last year they had the number 1 pick, and they chose to stay where they, to move down from where they were and keep their guy. That's how they were able to accumulate this year's 1st round pick. It's not because they were the worst team in the league.
Everybody wants to think that Caleb Williams is going to come in here and beat Pat Mahomes. There have been 2 great quarterbacks over the last 20 years. One was Tom Brady. One was Pat Mahomes. Okay, you put Peyton Manning in there. You can put Aaron Rodgers in there. But, I mean, as far as winning Super Bowls, those 2 right now are the gold standard, okay? So just because Caleb Williams didn't win in college, okay? He didn't win he won a Heisman Trophy. His teams didn't win anything in college. Justin Fields, at least he's been around for 3 years, and Chicago's thrown him to the curb. And I think Pittsburgh's going to end up being the winners in this. I think Pittsburgh is now going to end up with their starting quarterback for the next 10 years in Justin Fields. I think it's a brilliant move for Pittsburgh, and I think in the long run, I'm happy for Justin because, he's going to one of the most stable franchises in the history of football with one of the most stable coaches who knows how to win and has shown if you give him a decent quarterback, he'll win. So I think
that's the other thing no one even talks about is Justin Fields in 3 years in Chicago had 3 different offensive coordinators. He had 2 head coaches, 3 offensive coordinators, 3 offensive systems. And then you wonder why he doesn't light it up and look like Pat Mahomes. Well, hell, he didn't know what the damn plays were for half the season, and then he figured it out. And also, I mean, I know that I am a strong bias the other way, but the Buckeye bias is real, my friend. I remember last year, just at the draft last year, the draft before, nobody thought Justin Fields was any good. He dropped down to number 10 because, people just discounted him because he was a Buckeye quarterback and nobody liked him, even though, he couldn't have been any better in college. And then, you talk about last year's draft, DeJuan Jones could have been a first-round pick. I mean, the guy's 6'8", 360 pounds. They call him goddamn Thanos, for heaven's sake. Anybody that you nickname Thanos has to be pretty damn big and strong. And he drops to the 4th round, ends up starting for the Cleveland Browns. CJ Stroud, everybody said he was stupid and that he wasn't smart enough to be a quarterback in the NFL. I mean, he still got picked second, but they were all like every expert in the world was like Bryce Young is the guy. Bryce Young is the best quarterback. Bryce Young was garbage. He got his coach fired after 12 games. CJ Stroud damn near beat the Ravens in the conference championship.
Let me just anybody who doesn't know anything about football history, let's think. Tom Brady, in his career over 25 years, for the first 21 years, how many different coaches did he have? Yeah, he basically had one coach for most of his career.
And two offensive coordinators for the majority of it, Charlie Weiss and what's his name?
Pat Mahomes has had one coach his whole career. Eli Manning, for the first 13 years of his career, how many different coaches does he have?
One coach.
Ben Roethlisberger had two, but technically he only had Bill Cowher for what, 2 years?
Yeah.
The rest of his career he had Tomlin. How good was he? How many different coaches did Philip Rivers have out in San Diego? I mean, he still did well,
but he had
still. Yeah.
That's why they never won a championship or made deep runs in the playoffs. They had a different system every couple years.
I could go on. We could go on for hours and hours. Phil Simms in New York City had Bill Parcells for the first 11 years of his career. Joe Montana, Bill Walsh. I mean, Dan Marino, Don Shirley. You know why quarterbacks work out? Because they get one head coach who learns how to coach, decides to put a program around him that makes him successful, and it works. If you keep changing coaches and you keep restarting the program, the quarterbacks suffer. And if you keep bringing in new quarterbacks for the coach to try and coach, he suffers. Give him a chance to work it out.
Yeah, no, I just thought it was very interesting that Trey Lance got traded, last year during the season to Dallas for a 4th rounder to be the Cowboys' 3rd round or 3rd string quarterback. And now we're trading a starting quarterback who's been a starter for 3 years for a 6th rounder. I cannot make that make sense. I'm sorry.
Maybe that's the math that has kept the Cowboys out of the Super Bowl for the last 30-something years. So
yeah, I'm not saying it was a great pickup, but I'm just saying that there's no way. Nobody said a word at the time. Everybody's like, oh, 4th round pick. He was a top 10 pick. So, that kind of makes sense. The possibilities of him someday being good. But what about the possibility of Justin Fields being good now that he's not in the mess that was the Chicago Bears? I mean, the best, as I said, and you said as well, the best thing that could have happened to him was getting the hell out of Chicago. I didn't really care where he went. If he got out of there, as long as he didn't go to like the Cardinals or the Panthers, he was going to be in better shape than he was.
He had a chance now of being the Pittsburgh quarterback for the next 12 years. And being successful. I mean, he's going to be in a hard division. Let's face facts. You got Lamar and you got Burrow. Cleveland, you never know. But he'll measure up to the competition. Tomlin will have him ready. And I think he'll do well.
Yep. And, this garbage about Russ Wilson being the starter. Well, he may be the starter, but that's because he's, he was signed like a week before him, and that's the only reason why he's got a leg up.
But he also, they didn't resign him anything. He's cheap. They can get rid of him. It won't cost him anything.
He's a 1-year deal. They're paying him $1 million. So go ahead, throw him out there, see what it looks like. I can already tell you what it's going to look like, but throw him out there for a couple games. Let him not throw the ball away so that he doesn't get sacked, and then try out Justin Fields.
I think Justin will be fine. Well, I'm going to let you go to the anniversary dinner tonight. Enjoy yourself. We'll be back next week. We'll have broken down. We'll have ready for the second week of March Madness, and we'll have more to talk to you guys about. Everybody have a good night. Peace out.
All right. See you, buddy.